The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
Show. Right now, let's go straight to the phone lines. Mike Zullo, lead investigator for the Cold Case Posse. Are you with us, Mike?
Carl, how are you?
I'm doing great. Mike, you know, I just got to say this. I've got a ton of things to ask you, and I want to turn you loose and clear the air on some things, but I hope we're not imposing on you. I mean, you are a frequent guest, but it's our honor to have you because we reach so many people, of course, by radio, but then, of course, on the P.P. Simmons blog spot and Facebook and YouTube, and then we're syndicated and all over the Internet, you know, post and email, Center for Western Journalism, Obama Wears the Birth Certificate, birthreport.com, on and on and on it goes. And so it's important that you're here because the mainstream media right now is not giving you a voice, but I have a feeling pretty soon they're almost going to have to, don't you?
I do, Carl, and this is not an imposition at all. I mean, people deserve the truth here. Get away from the smog and the hype and the lies, and let's just get down to business.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for that attitude. And sometimes I hesitate to call you up and say, Mike, can you come on the show? I'm afraid you're going to say, again, and hang the phone up on me. But anyway, thank you so much. Well, listen, we've only got a little bit of time, so let's get down to business. All right, so a 207-point affidavit you have filed, you representing Sheriff Arpaio, Cold Case Posse, with the Alabama Supreme Court. Because that's a civil case regarding the eligibility of Obama to be on the ballot in Alabama. It's worked its way up through, it's an appeal process that's made it all the way to Supreme Court. You were asked by Attorney Larry Clayman, the attorney for the plaintiffs, to file this affidavit. I've read it. We've posted it on P.P. Simmons. It's gone viral ever since. It's been downloaded millions of times all over the Internet. People have read it. People are freaking out because it's so powerful. But also, Obama bots and naysayers are freaking out and making false claims that somehow this affidavit doesn't really mean a thing. Straighten all that out for us. Tell us what the affidavit is, why you were asked to submit it, and what impact, if any, it may or may not have.
Well, apparently, as I understand it, the Alabama Democratic Party supplied an amicus brief to the Superior Court, and contained within that were numerous arguments or allegations that they were making, trying to refute the claims made by Sheriff Arpaio, actually calling him an unofficial source when, in fact, he's the top law enforcement officer in Maricopa County, the fourth largest county in the nation, and a bona fide law enforcement officer. And they were submitting newfound evidence. They submitted another version of a long-form birth certificate, one I hadn't seen before, one with a completely different safety paper background. Yeah. Obviously not an authentic document, but just another fraud of something else that was frauded.
You mean there's a
fraud on top of fraud on top of fraud?
You mean there's another birth certificate?
I'm starting to wonder. I think I'm running out of toes on how many I can count. I don't know. They come out of the woodwork now with these different birth certificates. Yeah. But the audacity to introduce that to a court is appalling.
It is appalling.
Especially in an appeal process. So Mr. Clayman had asked if I would supply an affidavit with our findings, almost like a rebuttal document in a sense. And I agreed. I also made it clear to Mr. Clayman that there was in no way was I going to submit the new information that we found, which you and I have discussed previous, that we believe just drives a stake in the heart of this whole issue. Right. We're going to hold that for a better time. Right. But I also did tell Larry that I would, come at this a little different than I have in the past. Mm-hmm. And the affidavit that I supplied, I think it does have some new revelations in it. It does. It does give the folks an idea of how serious we were about this and how we conducted this. Yes. And the steps, and not all the steps, but the steps that we made to make sure we knew what we were talking about. Right. Right. Go ahead. Did you have something else? Okay. Yeah, the amicus brief, now the second part of your question, I think, was that it has no meaning, and that's not entirely true. My understanding is that court in Alabama could either decide to strike both of these briefs and not give them any mind and not even open them up. But it is also my understanding that those judges may actually read these, and they do have an ability to amend the lower court's record. Right. Which then would make them evidence. Right. And it's totally up to them on how they want to do this. So we don't know what they're going to do. Mr. Clayman believes that they're going to both be accepted. And I put mine forth in anticipation that it would be accepted. I mean, if I just thought we were going to submit something for the sake of doing it to get it stricken, I wouldn't have wasted the time to put 56 pages together.
Right, 56 pages, 207 points, never before revealed points. Some of them have been revealed in past press conferences, etc. But there were several points in there and several revelations that have never been open to the public before. It was a masterful piece of work, and I'm telling you, it will crush, it will destroy the Democrats' argument if the Supreme Court allows it as evidence. And so what you're saying is that, of course, you submitted it because there is a chance, and even a good chance, that it can be or will be at least read by the judges, if not actually entered as evidence. But you would not have wasted your time just throwing together a piece of paper 56 pages long that meant nothing.
I wouldn't have done it, and I believe what we put in there is concise. We believe that we actually excel past the level of criminal probable cause. If I could be so bold and say I believe we even excel past, beyond a reasonable doubt, which is what a jury would have to come up at. Right. I believe it's a certainty in what we've proven. Yeah. And if you go to that register stamp in that document, you don't need anything else.
Right. Yeah, no,
that stamp says it all.
Yeah, you're right, and all of that is outlined in the affidavit. I can tell our listeners, if you go to the P.P. Simmons site, you can download it, but if you'll read our article, and I'll tell you how to get the link to the article, I've outlined the entire table of contents to that affidavit there, 207 points with topics, so that if you're familiar with, say, the first 12 topics, you don't even have to read that. You can go to the ones you aren't familiar with. So the best way to get that is go to carlgallops.com. In the middle of the page, click on the link that says Latest P.P. Simmons Videos. You'll find the third one is a link video to the blog article. It's that simple. Go to carlgallops.com, Latest P.P. Simmons Videos, find that video. It's the third one, and you'll go there. Now, I've got to say this, Mike. So that affidavit is powerful. It's strong. It's 207 points. It may or may not be used by the court, but there is a good chance it will be. That's why you filed it, of course. But the Obama bots are absolutely and strangely silent about that affidavit. I think it has floored them. What do you think?
I would almost agree with you. As irrelevant as those people are, my inbox gets filled up with all kinds of vile comments from these folks the minute I open my mouth on a radio show.
Yeah.
I haven't received one comment.
Yeah.
I think they might have a problem.
I think they've got a problem. I think they're beginning to see. And the bottom line is, those 207 points, as you've just said, this is just the tip of the iceberg as to the evidence you do have. But so much of the really condemning evidence you haven't released yet. That's being saved for the possible criminal prosecution at a federal or state level.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That is correct.
Yeah, amazing. Well, now, address this. There is still a flurry of activity amongst the VIPs, correct? I mean, you've got meetings scheduled, you've got people still calling you, you've got people coming on board. You believe, it's my understanding, you believe the Benghazi and the IRS scandals and the AP scandals have maybe even helped your case a little bit because the public is aware of how scandalous this administration is, but also some VIPs are beginning to raise their eyes and say, what about that birth certificate stuff?
Well, that's true, Carl. I have a busy remainder of the month coming up, and I won't go into too much detail about that. But what I do promise is when it's time that I can release what we're doing, you will be the first to know.
Okay. Oh, fantastic.
We could do that here. But, no, I think that the Benghazi thing and I think all the other coverage, especially the IRS thing, is critical. But, and you know this, from your law enforcement experience, you were involved in 2 gun battles, for lack of a better word, so you could relate to this. Unless you've ever put yourself in a situation where you're in harm's way, where somebody's trying to take your life, it's very difficult for the average citizen to relate to what happened in Benghazi. Right. I mean, you can look at it and you can see it, but you really can't feel it.
Right.
I mean, people died and we know that, but we're so desensitized to that in this society, it makes it rough, and it just becomes a terrible story. But when you talk about the IRS...
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That has the ability to turn your world upside down,
yeah,
and ask you questions about as far as how much money is in your wallet.
Right.
People can relate to that. And if that isn't the epitome of tyranny, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
And they are watching cover-up and lies and cover-up going on right before their eyes. Now, you and I are no stranger to that based on this birth certificate issue.
Right.
If you think this isn't a cover-up and a big lie, I got a bridge to sell you in New York.
I hear you. And you were quoted, I saw an article that's gone viral on the Internet. You were quoted in an exclusive article by the postandemail.com as saying something along the lines of, look, if Congress would have done their due diligence early on, it's possible that Benghazi would have never happened. And what you were referring to is if they had paid attention to the evidence that had been being presented to them concerning the fact that this guy has no identifying documents, he may not even be qualified to be the president, that these kinds of atrocities we've seen unfold and now are being heard before Congress may not have occurred.
I have to say, it pains me to say that, but I do believe that could be the case.
Yeah, and of course that's your opinion and my opinion, but we have strong opinions on this based upon the criminal information we have on this document that was proffered. Well, Mike, let's do this. Let's take a quick time out, and when we come back, I have some hard-hitting questions for you, and I know you have more you want to say about all this because we've got the affidavit in the Supreme Court of Alabama. I want to ask you about when you think something might happen on that. I also want to ask you about some things that are being said on another website of a person who claims to be on our side, but they're talking as though they're part of the Obama bot faction. I'll let you comment on that. I'll let you comment on that when we come back. All right, we're going to take a brief time out. We'll be right back.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.